On today's episode of Project Pundits Unplugged, Braden almost wets himself.
Most movies I find entertaining, but I'm not like falling over myself. I almost wet myself on this one.
Jim's new approach to handling his problems.
Now I just leave the area and go to a hotel somewhere and call the check-in status of how things are getting fixed.
Braden needs to relearn funny.
I used to think you understood comedy. You did the improv stuff, but like, I don't know what happened. Maybe you need to go do improv again to relearn what's funny.
I've lost it. Is that okay? I gotcha.
Welcome everybody to the next episode of the Project Pundits Pod. We seem to be on a pattern of about doing a podcast a month at this point. I really want to get back to the every other week. For me personally, I'm getting busier, not less busy. So I'm gonna try to do this, and maybe I may at some point put out a post for someone who can be a program manager. What do they call it? A production manager, or what do they call it? A producer. A producer. We need a producer to do some of the. I think finding time for Braden and I to talk isn't necessarily a problem. We've got all the technical stuff mostly solved. Every week there's always something little, but the editing and the producing, and that's a little
really what Jim needs to is he does need a show producer, someone who could be in sort of a third window as we're discussing, to be able to say, time, shut up, Jim, shut up, stop.
Braden has not yet embraced what is clearly taken hold as what's known as the long-form podcast. And so one of the podcasts I listen to often is the All In podcast, one of the more popular ones. In the All In podcast, they interviewed presidential candidates. Well, that's one of the topics we'll talk about briefly.
Jim, you're not a presidential candidate. I just want you to be really clear.
Maybe we'll get them on. But they had my point is, their episodes go a little over an hour.
You get Trump on.
Yes.
You get Donald Trump on this podcast. I give you permission to make it as long as you want.
No, the first celebrity guest.
Carte blanche.
Right. The first celebrity guest we're gonna get is Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson.
I'll lower the standard. You get Bernie Sanders on this podcast. I'll go as long as you want.
Like, enjoying the pod, but I only have 5 minutes, right? And we need to talk about universal health care. I saw your episode last week. I think you understood it. Braden clearly did not understand the benefits of government run. We've tried the private insurance. We've failed. Anyway, so yeah, Bernie.
I can tell you've got it down, Jim. You know what you're doing there.
Look, whatever. Least worst. That's this episode should be. That's the
least worst.
The least worst. This episode is kind of in my wheelhouse. It's about problems. Everything's a problem, and I wanted to. And I'll take credit or blame depending on how this goes for this. It wasn't really an epiphany over the last couple months, but really one way to go through life is to look at everything as some sort of a problem to be solved. Waking up in the morning, taking a shower, putting your shoes on, right? All of it is a problem. So to me, everything's a problem. And as we talk through this, I want to chat about the importance of looking at things like a problem and being able to break it down and having awareness and whatnot. And I think awareness skills and problem solving abilities and I want to go through how that can benefit you in your life, and then in just some observations. And I think this is the start of a potential segment. Braden likes to break down my rants into different segments, so I'm okay with that because I need an outlet sometimes and to complain about things in life, observations that are just annoyances. Like, I'll just give one right now, and then we can go down like a list of just one right now. iPhone users. Okay. You would think the epitome of people who spend money on usability and everything else. In your iPhone, if you go to your app store, right? And you click on search. Okay?
I'll do this right now, Tim.
Right, do it right now. You click on search.
Okay, App Store,
what just Braden, when you want to search, what do you do? You type in what you want, right? Guess what? When you go to search, it doesn't put the focus on the search box. You actually have to click in the search box to type. Like, it's a stupid thing.
I click on search. Oh, you're right. Yeah, no.
So you got to do an extra click, which is on the opposite end of the phone, and it's just, and there's nothing else you do. You click on search, you can't do anything else other than, like, so it's a screen with a search box.
So for those of you who can't see, Jim is complaining literally about not being able to move his finger. What about?
No, I do it clearly.
5 inches, moving a finger 5 inches, like, oh my goodness.
When you want to search,
that's what he's ranting
about. So if you click that link, you can't do anything unless you take an additional action to click. And the only thing on the screen is that box. It's just.
Well, have you considered that was a design decision, Jim?
No.
Here's why. Because there's suggested apps underneath it.
But mine doesn't come up. Well, it does.
For example, the World of Peppa Pig kids games comes up.
Is that what comes up at the top of your list?
Well, because I assume it's related to other things. So, like, my kids occasionally will put games on mine.
Your kids are how old? Like, what's your youngest? How old?
Older now.
So you still have Peppa Pig at the top of your suggested.
Still there. Hey, Jim, sometimes I install Nickelodeon games on my phone, okay?
Oh my gosh, wait, hold on a second, Braden. I have 1, 2, 3. My 5th one is the World of Peppa Pig. Oh, so it's so it must be a sponsored thing.
Something they're promoting. But here's my point, right? Is I was thinking it was related to existing apps, and they were just trying to say it was an algorithm, but it wasn't, apparently. Anyway, my point is, it could be a deliberate design choice that says, rather than us just let you directly start searching, we want you first to be forced to move your eyes past the suggested apps that are going to bring clicks and ultimately drive traffic there.
Why you gotta pee on my idea?
Cast shade. Yeah. I'm sorry, Jim. I'm not trying to dissuade you from being.
So can we talk
really
about what
upset.
My number 2 app recommendation is?
Yeah, what's your number 2 app recommendation?
And I didn't know this was a thing. Bumble for Friends. So Braden probably doesn't know what.
I should know this.
So Bumble is a dating app. I believe that's the one.
Oh, dating app. Okay.
Is a female-driven one to where the females make all the choice. But now there's a Bumble for Friends. I need more friends. Clearly.
So your iPhone must have data enough between texts or it listening to you.
Or no. I'm on dating apps, so that's probably what it is. Yeah. Or it's reading the fact that I'm very lonely and could use friends. Anyways, this is totally nothing to do with anything. So back to the episode. So did you end up watching the presidential debate? Any of it?
I didn't. No, not. I haven't. I didn't watch a drop of it.
Did you see any clips?
I have been news agnostic for almost like a week and a half, so I have not seen anything. Tell me about the debate. How did people react to it? How was it? I didn't get to watch any of it. Was it? Yeah, I should have, and I just haven't.
It's nails on a chalkboard for me. So I tried. So I will say I tried for. It was a little over 30 seconds, and I had to switch it. In my oldest, Cameron, he thinks it's hilarious to be like, hey, did you see this clip of the debate? And try to shove it in my face. And I'm like, stop. Like, stop.
Yeah.
It's so bad.
You know, my thought, it's interesting because one of our daughters, who this is her first election that she's voting in, presidential election that she's voting in. had said, hey, should I watch the debate to inform myself? I said, there are lots of ways of informing yourself. Unfortunately, maybe 100 years ago, debates were an actual sort of long format thing where people would respectfully listen to each other and have a rational discussion of ideas. Today, a debate is a media performance. I'd call it a performance, in which people try to see who can put the best zingers, shout downs, and sound bites together and package them up. It doesn't really tell you how their policies, what their real policies are.
But this debate really did inform a lot.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah, because Joe Biden just lost his place, paused.
Oh no!
Oh no! And afterwards, his wife in the posting, he's like, "You did a good job, Joe. You answered all the questions."
Joe, you did such a great job. You answered every question. You knew all the facts.
Wait, Jim, this makes so much sense. I've seen in social media over and over, it looks like a mom holding a little toddler up, and it's got Jill's face on the mom and Joe's on the little baby. And it says something like, Joe, you did such a good job, little guy, or something. Is that what that's about?
That was the whole focus. It was so bad. I mean, donors went away, and they're saying he should just step down out of it, and just because there's no way.
Was it that
his
bad?
approval rating went from 48 to 33.
Oh my God!
Yeah, talk about a mega drop.
I have not watched it. Now I need to go watch it. Was he really that discombobulated?
It was just unintelligible. Couldn't keep up. And Trump was at some point. Trump was actually trying to be nice, in Trump's way. It was that bad. He's like, honestly, I don't know. I don't understand what he just said.
Dealing with everything we have to do with, look, and I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on the total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
And Trump just does his normal, every other word is a lie.
But if you think about it, that's kind of a smart approach, though, to
he didn't go at him hard as he normally would because he didn't need to.
You're right. You're just like, guys, I don't even know what to tell you. This guy is literally off his rocker. Why would you vote for him? Let's just end the debate now.
They had when Trump left the stage without shaking hands, and they're like, oh, but then Joe Biden goes down to shake people's hands and goes to the steps and have his wife, they're small steps, but walk down the steps holding them. I'm like, oh, I feel so literally the feeling was I feel terrible for him, but it was that bad.
Are people trying to spin it or is it just unspinnable?
So that was the interesting thing. I did want to see how if people were going to. So afterwards, most of even the Democratic lead pundits and everything were this is a catastrophe. This is bad. He has to resign and everything else. I did watch. On Sundays I like to take it slow, and I've watched Meet the Press for years, right, at 10:30, and there's a couple of people who are he's with it and sharp as a tack and da and we gotta the alternative is if we don't,
who is saying that? Who is saying he's sharp as a tack?
I met with him for lunch and he's aware of everything, and I'm come on guys, you're making it worse because people have eyes and ears. So
no one is facing, and instead of saying, hey, he may not be sharp as a tack, but he's got a good team around.
Thank you.
Spin it instead of just lying, because no one's buying that, right?
And I think the thing is, and I was talking with one of my other friends about this. I think the political advisors are the death knell now of a lot of candidates. So I'll give you Mitt Romney was one, right? Oh, Mitt Romney's, he's moderate, right? But what he ended up doing in the election is that I think the advisors told him, look, you have to lock in a conservative base and go and pander to them. And I'm like, who are they going to vote for? They're not going to vote for, who was it, Obama? He's running. They're not going to vote for, what are we talking about? But he went really conservative, and he's not a really conservative guy. He's pretty moderate. So
pundits will they'll steer you wrong sometimes. I mean, we won't.
No,
as
God
pundits,
no, not us.
We will never.
No, God no. We were talking about movies earlier. And Braden has just a weird things he thinks are funny. Like he thinks Jack Black is funny. Can we just throw that out there? Jack Black. I mean,
well, I also thought Napoleon Dynamite was funny.
I never watched that movie. You believe that? I have never watched Napoleon Dynamite. It's on my list. I gotta watch it.
Here's the thing, Jim. You should watch it at least for cultural references because there are increasing numbers of those, right? But at the end, I mean, I found myself. I literally turned to the group and I'm like, "Wait, what?" Because the credits were starting to roll, and I'm like, "Is that a joke? Is the movie really over?" Because the entire movie, when the movie's over, you're like, what just happened? There wasn't any plot. There wasn't anything. It was just like some kid kind of struggling a little bit in high school, and then there's credits running and music playing. I'm like, what the freak just happened? So it was funny, and there are parts where I like spat dairy products out of my nose, but I have a far more refined sense of humor than you do, Jim. Again, We've already covered this. This has been definitively exposed by millions of people weighing in with comments on our previous discussion about like Jim Carrey and Dumb and Dumber. We don't need to rehash it. We already know who has the better taste in movies. But go ahead.
So I'm going to put out there so at least we catch any sort of the tailwinds of this viral thing that has happened for the last 2 weeks. We won't get into it, but like, has the meme of the Hawk Tuah girl crossed your
Hawk Tuah? Wait, this sounds familiar.
Like Hawk Tuah.
Hawk Tuah.
No.
Yeah. What? I think I've seen some.
So this was a very inappropriate.
Again, it went over my head.
The topic of like, you gotta like. I can't.
No,
even,
it's okay. If it's inappropriate, then just let it go.
It's inappropriate, but point being, it's made it everywhere, and it was this clip, and people have remixed it, and
oh dear.
they did like, I just saw one today, like you remember in Happy Gilmore, and Adam Sandler's on the mini golf course, and he puts the ball into the clown, and the clown spits the ball back at him.
Yeah,
so somebody cut out the audio. It was like Hawk Tuah, like spits the ball.
Boy.
You're gonna die, clown.
You're gonna die, clown. See, now we can agree on pretty much any Adam Sandler film, probably.
There's some people who just like, why do you find Adam Sandler funny?
No, Happy Gilmore, I could watch all day. Many references to that one. That one's fine.
Right.
Anyhow.
So we won't talk about, but that was a huge thing. The other one is tangentially. It's related. Did you see? This one is funny, and maybe we can put the clip. You know Bill Belichick is dating a 24-year-old ex-cheerleader?
You're making that up.
No. So, but what was great about it is he got caught on a. Go ahead.
Well, just slow down here. Wait, what would attract? And Bill Belichick is the most somber, like. Emotionally, like let's just imagine what a date would No, stop. Wait. What would a date with Bill Belichick look like, right? It'd be something like this. So, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. I'm fine. I'm a coach.
So I think what people outside of New England don't know is
they don't know is what
funny.
His press conferences look like.
Right.
I know he's funny, but what I was just doing just now, if you've ever seen Bill Belichick do a press conference, he sits up there and he hates the press. He just hates them. And so he'll get up there and they'll say like, so you guys didn't do well today, right? And he'll be like, he won't even answer, just be like, I'll be like, do you feel like your strategy was good going in? Yes. Like he says one answer.
Or like
it's always
we need
understated.
to be better. We're gonna work on things. So yeah.
And then that's it. Like, so I'm just trying to imagine what a date with this guy looks like, right?
Well, I can
how are you
show
feeling
you
right now.
I can actually show you part of what some portion of this looks like, because what happened was
someone paparazzi'd the poor guy.
No, even better.
Oh, what?
So it turns out there was Ring doorbell footage of Bill Belichick in this condo with from this girl. I guess she has a roommate. He was so they show him sneaking out without a shirt on, all flabby, like going to his car early in the morning. And which is just hilarious on his own, but I just remember the radio talk show host was like, was he sneaking out to his Buick, like just like stuff like the old person?
Leave the poor guy alone.
So we're gonna put the clip in of Bill Belichick to further this. He's dating a 24-year-old cheerleader. He went from his last girlfriend was 61 to 24. So
he's got to be what?
He's 72,
probably, right?
I think he's 72.
Okay.
71, 72. Yeah. Maybe he is a very good lover.
Jim, stop.
It could be. I mean, maybe he has a playbook of moves.
Maybe. Oh boy.
Right?
Oh boy.
I mean,
maybe he is just a romantic that had just swept her off her feet, and love is a universal. Maybe she has daddy issues.
Who knows? Like, I don't know, but like,
and he had to. Okay, so tell me what else you got in your bag of tricks, Jim. What else? Move us along.
So, all right. Do you want to get into problems?
Yeah. So let's talk about your problems.
Let's talk about problems.
Because you got a lot of problems.
So many. Well, I do have a lot of problems. So I think so many problems. So the reason I wanted to talk about problem solving, well, there's a myriad of reasons, but one of the main reasons is in the professional world. A lot of what I do, and I suspect Braden does, whether we think about it like this or not, we obviously solve problems, we run projects and whatnot, but a lot of what I do and what my teams do is we end up coming into situations that have kind of devolved to a point where the client isn't happy with what's happening. The projects are over budget. You know, a myriad of things. And
Jim often, I think, doesn't understand either what's happening. They've lost sight of what they're trying to do or solve.
Or never really understood it in the first place. Or never understood it in the first place.
That's true.
And so why I want to talk about this is because I think. No, and this is where it applies to broader life as well. I think it's important to try to understand before you do anything what the problem is you're trying to solve. And with a project, whether you call it a project or a problem or whatnot, it really behooves you to spend some time understanding not only what the client really wants, understanding if the client really understands what they want, because sometimes what they say doesn't really match what they want, and then two, understanding the parameters and the boundaries in which you're allowed to solve that problem, right? So you have, first of all, figure out what it is you're trying to do, right? And then second, like, what are your constraints that you have to operate within? And again, we've talked about this in other episodes, but I'm going to hammer it home again. There's very obvious constraints on a project, like how much money do I have to spend? What's my time frames? You know,
Jim, can I just share one of the most common disconnects that I've seen, you probably as well, is that they'll say, here's what we want, and they'll describe the goals for what they're trying to accomplish. And then 90%, I'll just say often, here's the system that we're implementing, okay? And when you look at the system, the features, how it's going to operate, you fairly quickly can see what the system that they're implementing can do is not everything that they're anticipating. And so you get this disconnect, right? You say, hey, sure, we can implement this system, but FYI, here are the things that it's not going to do for you, right? And sometimes you can solve for those, you can customize, although that leads to ugly problems itself. But oftentimes it's that disconnect where someone's listened to a salesman says, hey, this thing is going to solve all my problems. But when you listen to the problems and listen to what the solution is going to do, there's a disconnect. And that's where I think, at least when you're brought in to consult, to help people cut through why isn't this working or what's going on, especially when you're having operational problems with that system, that's where you have to say, hey, somewhere along the line, you were told this system is the solution to what your vision is, and I'm here to help you understand where those disconnects are, right? I'm sure you've run into that situation
all the time, right? And this is really important, right? So I think this is topical as well, primarily because just day-to-day life, what's gotten really hard is just making sense of life, or sense making what's going on in the world. And in these same skills that would apply towards the things Braden's talking about apply in the real world. Right now, especially with AI. See, AI, I'll get AI in every episode, every 5 minutes. If not subliminally, we'll just flash AI.
Just throw it up there.
Yep.
AI makes things trickier as AI gets more subtle in terms of imitating real life, whether it's dialogue, whether it's facts, whether it's images, whether it's videos, etc. You start to have to do a little more critical thinking as you're thinking about, what's the source of this information?
Right. So I think these skills are really important generally. So understanding, one of the first things I think that is a good thing to teach a kid is to ask why, and just why and why and why, right? I think in problem solving your projects, really spend time to understand with whoever it is you're working with what they're trying to solve, agnostic of the solution, right? And I think this is what Braden was getting at. And this is one of the things in project management that is a consistent thing. You're brought in, you're asked to manage a project, and they're like, and also here's the solution, which is another constraint. Sometimes you're stuck, in which case, you got to deal with it. But it's really important to understand what the true problem is. And really the concept of first principles thinking comes in here. Really get back down to basics, question your assumptions, ask questions of the person, why are you trying to accomplish it? What are you trying to, no, you're not trying to launch new software. Why do you care about new software? You care about reducing the number of customer service calls. You care about increasing sales. What are those things you're trying to solve? And it's important to understand all those soft circumstances, in including your own biases, right? So everybody is biased by their own history, what they've experienced in life. You create, known biases. You're blind to certain things, and that should, even the person you're talking to, plus you, plus anybody else, it's important to continue to have self-awareness and question your own knowledge and thoughts and everything else through this process. So I don't know, Braden, you look like you're going to say something on that, but.
No, it's interesting. You were talking about the first principles, and that's really the way that I think most of my analysis, as I come into, especially a situation that, let's say I don't understand well, right? It could be a new technology to me. It could be a new business process, something that I haven't seen a lot before, right? I have to start with basic sense making and ask those big picture questions, right? Like, what are we trying to accomplish stuff? And then I have to ask still small chunks, right? I can't say dive into the process. I have to start by saying, before we get there, someone tell me what this process is from beginning to end in 5 steps. If you have to break it down more than 5, then it's too detailed. So tell me in 5 steps, right? The customer submits a claim, the claim gets processed, it gets paid. I don't know, I'm making this up, right? But you have to start with context that you understand, and then go deeper and deeper from that full context. But I've been continually astonished in every job that I've been to, where I'll ask questions because I have to understand things end to end like that. I've talked to dozens and dozens of people across multiple industries, and it never fails to shock me when, well, it doesn't shock me anymore because I've seen it so often, but you'll talk to someone and they'll say, oh, I don't know. My process starts here and it ends here. And I don't know what happens before it starts or after it ends. I just know I own this piece of the pie. I make sure that this piece of the pie runs really well, but I have no context before or after. And I guess in some situations that's okay if you want to be a cog in a wheel for the rest of your life. But my experience is if you want to be effective, if you're stuck in a role somewhere, the first thing you can do is start asking what happens before and what happens after, and how does that process fit into the bigger scheme of things. Because the bigger vision that you have, the more effective you are as a leader, as a team member, and certainly as a lead, someone who's driving the project or consulting with the project.
Yeah, I mean, I
just
we could do no, and I think we could do an entire episode about how corporate America generally has, I'll say, devolved or evolved, or I'll say devolved into a situation that you're exactly what you're talking about, right? So I don't want to get into the whole reasons why, but what Brandon's talking about is that corporations have started, this has been going on a long while. I think maybe going back to the outsourcing, maybe that's the trigger. So what ends up happening is you decompose something down into its piece parts, and then you pluck out the pieces of that are commodity, and you give that to a team, right? So think of it as a big assembly line. That's how corporations would like everything to operate. So if you're talking about a transaction of any sort, you could take a customer phone call, right? So you have people who develop these automated IVR, integrated voice response, like these automated systems to take the call. So you have a team that sets up 800 numbers, which is different than everything else. They don't understand why they're setting up the 800 number or anything else. They just get a request that says, I need a new 800 number. They set it up. Then there's the telephony software that has to take that call in and do something with it. Then you have a different team that has the voice response, press 1 to do this, press 2 to do this. That team, again, gets a request that says, here's how I want the menu to work. And again, what's happened in the corporate world is, they're not incentivized to ask, why would you want number 2 to do this and number 3 to do this? They just do what they're told. And then after that, it gets routed to a set of people. It goes into a queue and goes to and again, those people are like, I get calls that are about X, Y, and Z only, and I answer them within there. So if a person asks a question that's outside of there, they don't know, and they're not supposed to know. So they redirect that call. And then there's the software that supports the CRM software, the call center software that does certain things, right? Every part about that assembly line are different people, and they're all incentivized to do their job only, and they're usually rewarded or managed to only those tasks within their boundary. And so it used to be to where it was important to kind of know that whole process. So you had the context to bring this thing. You understood how it all felt together. And yes, you may specialize in something, but you had awareness of a bigger picture. That's generally boiled down to these days being called a generalist. And I think every good consultant is a generalist. It shouldn't really matter what you're working at. Over time, your subject matter expertise is a contributing factor into your success or your effectiveness at problem solving. But I was actually having a meeting with a fellow consultant partner that I'm working with, a new partner, at dinner the other night. And we were talking about, I said, a good consultant should be able to go into any industry. I am not fearful to go into any industry. Maybe rocket science, something that's so engineering or obscure that I don't have enough base knowledge. But if I had to go consult, let's say Domino's or Papa John's was having some sort of a problem, I'd have no problem going in there and within a very short time, to Braden's exact point, ask the questions like, we're not getting pizzas out quick enough, where our drivers are this, whatever the problem is, to be able to ask enough questions, break it down, map it out, and then, get to solving that problem. And I think these are skills that anybody can develop, but I think, you need to be first of all, just be aware and ask questions, right? And I think so many people just don't do that anymore.
You hear a new acronym. You'll hear a new acronym. I mean,
this
most
great one, yeah.
jobs, you'll hear a new acronym every day, right? Why wouldn't you go find out what that acronym is? Way too often, I'll get, silent IMs from someone to me saying, hey, what does X mean? And that's okay. I mean, that's at least saying something, but there are probably 10 other people on the call that wonder the same thing that aren't asking it. And I've made a living of asking stupid questions. And I'll say, honestly, asking stupid questions, and you can be self-effacing a little bit if you're worried about it, right? You can say, hey guys, sorry, this is probably a stupid question. I'm just a dumb guy, but can you help me understand what is that? And in my entire career, I can only remember one time, this was way early on in my career, where I really felt dumb afterwards. Almost always, I'll say 99.999, in fact, every single time except for one in my career, you ask what it is, and people are happy to share their knowledge. They say, oh yeah, no worries. And they don't assume that you know it.
Yep.
They feel sometimes sheepish themselves for not saying what the acronym is. And they'll say, sorry, yeah, it's this, or it's that.
That's happened to me twice. So embarrassing. They're seared into my brain, and I won't even repeat them.
What were yours? No, I got
it. I can't. It's...
Okay, I'll tell mine. I mean, mine is super embarrassing, right? This was right at the beginning of my career. So I didn't know any professional jargon at all, like nothing, period. And so someone said, what's the ETA on that? And I said, yeah, wait, what? The ETA, when and I'm like, I'm sorry, what's the ETA? And they're like, when do you expect to have it there? And eventually they're like, estimated time of arrival. Have you ever heard that? For some reason, I just wasn't picking up on the context of what was going on. And so, yeah, I was embarrassed. Majorly.
So mine was worse because I was an arrogant punk, right? So was asking a question of a VP of IT. I was 19 and same thing, new in a professional
wait, there was
world.
one more. There was one more too. Don't let me forget, because I have to share this one too. But go ahead. There was one more. I forgot.
Mine was like, so he's like, well, the delta. So the term delta, like I just
delta,
right. So it was a
tricky
change. I did not. So and I had interpreted in my head from context. There's other meanings of what a delta is related to rivers. So I somehow, like, someone was asking a question, clarifying question of the IT VP, and I took it upon myself to try to explain it.
Exposited your knowledge of delta,
and then it was like the VP is like, that is actually not what I said whatsoever. The delta, and I'm like, I didn't, and I went and looked it up afterwards. I'm like, oh my god, I'm such a moron. I was beet red, 19 years old, and
Jim, it's fun to expose your stupidity. I think. I mean, it's a good thing to be humble. The one, so a guy on my team, he had sent me a request. He had said, like, hey, can you do this, talk with this guy, and at the bottom he says, F you, like
right the F you
917 or something. I'm like, what? and I couldn't figure it out, so I just walked over to his desk. He's on my team, and he's a funny guy. He's a good guy. So I'm just like, hey, sorry, what is F you? And he's like, follow up. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then he laughed. He's like, Braden, I'm so sorry. He says, this one, when I got this sent to me when I first started, and it was said in a little bit of context, like the guy was kind of mad, so he's like, hey, follow up, I don't want this to get lost or whatever. But since Jim didn't know what it was, and not Jim U, this is a different Jim.
Yeah.
He was a little hot, and so he just follows out. He says, F you too.
F you was, I didn't get that at first. I didn't have a public exposure, but that was the same thing. Like, why is this like saying F you to me? And I'm like, I couldn't.
F/U.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. And the guy, fortunately, the guy didn't take offense. The guy called him up laughing. He said, "Follow up, Jim, follow up, F/U." So anyhow, I thought that was a funny one.
It's so I think general awareness of the things around you. So in a professional environment and whatnot, understanding the people, observing whether they're paying attention or not, like just observing the people, observing the problem, just be observant and aware of the situation around you. Like, consciously try to do that, and you're going to pick up on so many things, right? And that awareness is going to lead you to a lot of different things, but it'll be a good contributor to helping you understand the environment and the problem you're trying to solve and whatnot. I think equal to that is self-awareness. And what's shocking to me, and I think this is a professional skill that is tied to a midlife crisis.
Do you think self-awareness is something that people can improve, Jim?
I do. I think you have to, yeah.
Okay.
I think sometimes I'll give a story. So my youngest son, once in a while, and it happened this week at a different time, had informed me of why I was a bad parent on something. It was because, why did you have to teach us to be aware of the world and different things? And Braden and I talked about this, and it's akin to that kind of scene from The Matrix. Like, so when you wake up, do you want to know you're living in a simulator? Would you want to know that? And if you do, your world is here. Pardon my French, and we can bleep that out. But awareness, I think, Braden, you had stated this, and I agree with it. Self-awareness and awareness of the world around you will give you a steady baseline of anxiety.
It does, Jim. It absolutely does. It when you are aware of things that others aren't, all it brings. In fact, I just for a second here, Jim. No, ignore everything that Jim is saying. When they say ignorance is bliss, they're not kidding. Because when you are aware, and I'll give a small example, right? Because my wife and I have very different kind of styles. And when we're in a supermarket, I am keenly aware of where my cart and my body is relative to other people who want to get back and forth, right? And I'll say almost equally or maybe even less focused on getting the stuff that I should be than I am on making sure that I'm not blocking other people. My wife's kind of exactly the opposite. She's just talking to me, enjoying herself. She's not really focused on that. And it gives me anxiety when we're blocking people. We're taking up like a whole aisle. There's a traffic jam of 6 people, and it gives me anxiety. I'm like, we got to get out of the way, and it drives me crazy. I could understand why your son said, "Thanks, Dad.
Yeah,
you jerk. You just imbued me with anxiety for the rest of my life."
No, but I think awareness is super important. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I have a whole list of things that just give me tremendous like anxiety and whatnot. Understanding that and having awareness of that, you'll pick up on the set of factors, especially within a project, or if you're a consultant or you're a project manager or you're an analyst or anything else. If you're observant, you'll pick up on a whole bunch of things that are contributors to the state of the environment you're working in that you can either influence or understand or have to work around, so that when you're solving a problem, you can go in with a high degree of confidence that you know what all the factors are in. So in my head, I've gotten to a point and where my brain just processes all those things and like gives you the probability. Like the best way I could describe it physically is like it spiders down the 20 different paths you can go, and it knows which of the 2 are the high probability and are going to have the highest outcome of success and what the risk factors are, right? I think over time that skill just, I don't know, it just I think you get more and more aware of these things. You
That's
get to
based
that
on
skill.
experience.
Yep.
As you've done that, and it's not unlike talking about awareness.
Yep.
I was watching the other day. We were at the close of a meeting. It was maybe 10 minutes before the meeting, and we're on a Teams meeting, so you can see everyone's faces. And I could read, talking about awareness, I could read and see clearly the decision makers on the phone were already focused on the next meeting. They were either multitasking, doing prep, some cases even talking, probably on another line or on speaker or something like that, right? And that's the point at which if you're generally aware and not laser focused in on whatever's going on, you would say, oh, you know what? Time for you to go to your last slide, wrap up, and say, these are the decision makers. The people that were most important in the meeting are already gone. You want to close out the meeting and say, great, hey, if there's a decision to be made, make it. Otherwise, say, guys, let's give you guys 10 minutes to prep for your next meeting, go on. And the number of people who do not pick up, especially on those nonverbals, it astonishes me. It just boggles the mind. So
I think these are, this is kind of all a predecessor to the actual problem solving, but awareness, right? Awareness, watch people's faces in meetings. Do yourself a favor. I know sometimes it's hard when you're running a meeting or doing things, but pick up on those cues and convert. If you're losing people and they're losing it, pivot and whatnot. I think, to Braden's earlier point, ask a lot of questions. Just ask questions, right? It doesn't have to be in a meeting or whatever. Just ask questions, understand it until you understand something. And again, I think for the most part, people want to help and they're appreciative of you asking questions and whatnot. I always had this rule because it was a rule that was given to me by a very senior consultant, one of my mentors early on. I don't mind you asking me a question. Please ask anything. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I don't care if you ask me that same question again. If you ask me a third time, I'm going to start to question whether you're capable of doing the job or not and whatnot. But so I think you have...
Or you're ready to run for president, whichever. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
or you are president. I think there's a lot of that, and again, I think it's a set of skills in life as well. Like Braden and I were specking about, talking about this, and I think you could apply it to things like there's a whole bunch of people who think the Earth is flat, right? So if you have this first principle skills, you back it up, you go back to the basics and start asking questions and doing research and everything else, right? And it helps you to kind of navigate these crazy conspiracies and is this real? Is it not? These skills should apply. I mean, it's flat earthers. I get caught in these rabbit holes of the moon landing and, whether, Stanley Kubrick, directed the moon landing videos that never happened.
Jim, can we just get, are you seriously considering that the moon landing never happened? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not seriously considering. I will tell you, go down that rabbit hole and it's super fascinating. Now, is there anything like the flat earth one just cracks me up. There's just basic physics, you'd have to, so many, world models would have to be just wrong. So the flat earth is funny. There's that conspiracy about, I think it's building 7, the World Trade Center building 8, I forget what it is, that collapsed. So you had the towers collapse and then a building on a side, which there's no reason for the building to collapse and whatnot. That's an interesting one, but I think again, these skills are hugely important. Then when you get to the actual problem solving thing, I think there's a whole bunch of skills there, but it is, number one is what Braden said, is to understand the environment that you're trying to solve. Once you define the problem well, understand the constraints of which, I have to solve this with these boundaries that were given to me. Overt ones, you have $5 million, you have 2 years, you have to secure data in this way if you're doing that, whatever those things are. And then there's ones where I think we joked about this in the Lamentables episode of, where like, your CFO hates the CIO. So, so funding and, decision-making, change management is, you got to anticipate, problems, relationships between executives, or, pick your soft constraint, or somebody, or, Bob's brother is a vice president at the software vendor that, they're considering going, right? So it's like, you can recommend a different platform, but like, that's not going to go well for you probably. So, and then the actual problem solving, I think once you define those things and really understand what it is that you're trying to solve, like what at its heart, the problem solving part becomes so much easier, because I think that's the hardest part, right? Is understanding the environment to solve within.
And then I'd say the second one is, too quickly, especially when technology is involved, people start involving technology too early.
Sure.
Follow me on this. When you're solving a problem, just like you break the environment and the questions down to its foundational pieces, solving the problem should be also putting those foundational pieces in place before you talk at all about technology, right? And this is why people today, they'll say, okay, now I can automate this, blah, 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 and it's okay. Our brains are wired to jump into how to design and architect a solution, but really the start of the solution should be a set of steps that are entirely technology agnostic, right? In any solution that I design first, I'll say, okay, the solution is the person does this, then this happens, and this happens, and this happens. None of those steps include any enunciation of technology. Then we say, okay, now let's layer on, within the constraints that we have, how we go about doing that, including, hey, you guys bought a package and you say I can't step away from that. Great. 3 of these steps can't be accomplished by that package. How do we supplement that package with something to get us those 3 steps or whatever? But by just jumping into the technology, you sometimes skip the fact that you don't really outline what I would call your highest level, really, requirements, right? Here's what I need the solution to be. And if you don't enunciate that at the 50,000 foot level, then when you get to the technology part, you skip whole blocks and sections, or you kind of just gloss over them and say, well, we'll figure it out, when in fact it might be a core tenet of what you're trying to solve for. So I think solving technology agnostic is a big part, starting technology agnostic and then layering on technology solutions afterwards.
Or just more broadly, solution agnostic, right? So in healthcare, one of the interesting evolutions in healthcare has been the evolution of automation of things, right? So let's just take your insurance company, or as we said in our last episode, the employer's policy is that before you let's get Ozempic, right? Let's take the fat drug, which I got to get back on because I'm the fattest I've been in my entire life. I'm layering the poundage on. I need to get back on Ozempic. That requires, for most insurance companies, a prior auth, which is say, prove to me why we should pay for this really expensive drug. So your
usually,
doctor, yep,
that authorization is going to be related to your long-term physical health. It's going to say, hey, I'm not doing this for cosmetic reasons. I want to do this because I need to stay healthy.
Traditionally, the way it used to be, those types of things, well, authorizations kind of developed in the last 30 years to be heavier, but they came in on a paper form in some sort. So sometimes they were mailed. For the most part, through, call it the late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, they were then faxed in on fax. It's still a manual paper, some sort of a paper form, and then some person had to then take that, key it in. And so in a lot of cases, so there's these projects that happen that, like, the project is, we need to automate da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, no. What are you, like, what are you trying to do? And then ultimately, when you ask enough questions about that, what they're trying to do is, like, we want to reduce the turnaround time and massively reduce the cost of processing. So we want to increase accuracy, increase turnaround time, and reduce costs. That's the problem you're trying to solve.
Well, you're right, yeah, and oftentimes you're right. The business person says, because this is a good example to talk about, the business person will probably say, we need a way to take these paper forms, because they're in a silo, right? And they'll say, we need a way to take these paper forms and automate the way that the data gets entered into the system, right? And what you should hear as a consultant is blah, 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 right? You don't really care. They actually shouldn't even be using the paper forms. You need to hear what they're not saying, which is we're actually trying to speed up the process of authorization and reduce the administrative overhead associated with it. In which case, you're locking yourselves in by what you're giving me into still keeping these paper forms. Let's explore more broadly what we can do so that maybe we don't even get these paper forms anymore, right? Like
that's right. And I think so. One answer might be we want to put an electronic portal up. Right now, you give a provider choice between faxing a form in and using the portal, but they think it's too hard to switch to the portal. So you have this customer service metric, which is interesting on stuff. How much does it cost to take a phone call? How much is an automated phone call? How much is a phone call that has a rep? How much is a transaction that is automated? How much is a transaction that inquire? And you would not believe it goes from like a web transaction is like 0.001 cents to an IVR, which is 30 cents, to a phone call, which is $1.50, to, and it keeps going up. And when you get to like a manual paper form, or something that's mailed in, it could be like $12 when you add up the cost of processing the transaction, right? And so when you look at something like those authorizations, right, like maybe the answer isn't the portal, or maybe that's an answer that's out there, or maybe you can OCR the forms, right? And you can come in and you can scan them, and that gets you incrementally there, so you don't have someone interpreting it. There's a form that's optically character recognized, and then it puts it in a system format, right? So I think objectively, not being biased by a solution and really just getting at what is the outcome you're trying to get to, and it's not automation. That may be the ultimate answer. It's reducing costs or making providers happier or whatever it is, or customers happier.
And this goes back to the hardest part of solving the problem is having that end-to-end context. And that end-to-end context, you can't always just start and stop with, yeah, sure, it starts with us getting a paper fax. Hold on. I need a bigger picture, right? How does this fit in your overall business, right? Oh, well, we pay claims based on whether they got an authorization. And if you get even just a little more of that process, you see, oh, okay, providers are submitting these paper claims in order to get approved to go ahead and perform a high cost, radiology or something that they need to get looked at ahead of time. And now having that broader context, you say, oh, so the actors here are providers that are submitting it. And then we get it on this side. Now I have a bigger context to work with to say, how do I solve this, including involving the providers potentially as part of the solution?
So the other thing, so even stepping further back, so what about this? So we're talking about healthcare and authorization. So if you step back even further, you're saying you question everything. Why are we even requiring providers to authorize this in the first place? How often do we decline this? And if we're declining it 2 out of 1,000 times, is it worth all this administrative effort to let 2 times when we would normally decline this go through, right? So that's stepping it further back into Braden's point, understanding the whole picture. That's what you should be doing, right? So and you keep going back, right? So if you eliminate the need for that transaction in the first place, that may be ultimately the right answer. Then you eliminate the whole transaction itself that you need to do. So I think that's it's important. And my argument with this is really, the connotation of the word problem is negative, right? It's got a negative connotation. In fact, do you remember, Braden, at one of the employers where we only worked at, well, we technically worked at 2 together, but this leader came in and said, we need to stop using the word problem. And we need to use the word opportunity. Right.
Yeah, so, I remember this very well.
Oh my God, that still drives me crazy.
Well, it was fun because then we would
use it everywhere else.
And you would use it. It started becoming a joke, right? Because we would all just be like, "Oh boy, here comes an opportunity." Well, guys, that's going to be a real opportunity. I'm not sure if I can do it. Like, you would deliberately use it as negatively as you could at using the word opportunity. But to your point, it has a negative connotation. In fact, I would just consider it neutral, right? I would think of it as there are problems, meaning that are negative connotation, right? And then there are problems that are simply and usually my experience is most people frequently will label work as problems. The number of people who have come to me and said, "Braden, I have a problem," and they explain it to me, I say, "Okay, that sounds like work." You're not saying and I would ask, right? I'd say, do you not have the tools you need to do no, I have the tools. Do you not have the resources and the people? Yeah, I do. Okay, so when you say it's a problem, what you mean is there's work to do, right? And that could be like most often it would be as we're assessing, say, a project and other application areas would say, there have impacts to our systems. Instead of simply saying, yes, we have work to do, they would tend to say, well, that's a problem. And I would say, oh yeah, help me understand. Well, it's a problem, meaning we don't just get to, our system just doesn't do it today. We have to actually do something to make that happen. I'm like, well, that's great. That's why I included you in this meeting.
And it is remarkable. But I think this applies everywhere. And I think where part of this mindset for me got developed, I think it's really worth it to go into quality assurance and testing career field. Two quick seconds on quality assurance and testing. You got two types of testing. You have people who say, these are the requirements that I'm supposed to test for, right? And they go and they do the very specific thing to say, this field changed to this color and whatnot. In the better testers are ones who like I'm going to use this system. How is the user going to use it? And is it functioning like it should? That, and I think I always took that other thing and it annoyed developers and it annoyed people, but it ended up in a better product because ultimately, that's what I think quality assurance and testing should do is just, and whatnot. So I think that's where a lot of my mindset comes from. But
I agree that some of the best learning I ever did was BA, so doing a analysis. When I wrote requirements, I understood more about the business than just about any other role I ever did. Requirements, so analysis and testing, both of those roles forced me to learn end to end what was going on. But I don't know that I would recommend a QA role to anyone who doesn't really have a strong path. Then again, what am I saying? I'm a project manager. People be like, "Oh my gosh, Braden, seriously? This is like the pot calling the kettle." Like, I mean, it's just because some people can't stand.
But I think that mindset. So this is, and again, I don't mean to keep beating this down, but every single job that you do in anything, you should approach it in that same way. And like someone like calling clock on you on a podcast episode saying we're way over what we should, like,
oh my gosh, that is that's over the top. That is crazy.
What I want to do, in your personal life, and putting Braden's sweet, beautiful, lovely, caring wife aside, be situationally aware and help people out who have constant anxiety about in a public environment. So let me give just a couple examples to close this out. So in your professional world, keep that mindset, problem solving, put some links in. We didn't really dive into how to problem solve it but I think it's the framing and the awareness and so much of it that really, really helps up front. And that's the part I want to get at. In your personal life, if you go to a movie, leave your infant child at home. Okay? If you go to a movie, don't talk during the movie. I'd say don't even talk during previews, because I enjoy the previews as well. I will give people room on the previews. If you go to a rated R movie, do not bring toddlers into rated R movies.
Did you get all those off your chest?
That's the movies ones. And Braden talked about the grocery store at Costco. If you get a demo and eat demo food at Costco and the free samples, don't block the aisle. Okay? Like, just don't block the... If you're in a parking lot and you're waiting for someone to back out of their spot so you get a closer one, be off to the side so someone can drive around you. Not that you're blocking an aisle of other people just so you can get the spot. I don't care if you're waiting, just don't be in my way. Like,
you don't want to cover the driving ones. Like, if you're in the far left lane and there's someone behind you and no one in front of you, get out of the left lane. Like, or
in that same situation, just stay in Connecticut, okay? If that's you, because that's how Connecticut drivers drive. They pass in the right lanes and travel in the left lanes. Like, it's bananas. Don't come to Massachusetts.
What I like about California is people just shoot by you at 100 miles an hour, whatever lane you were in. They don't really care. They just feel like, fine.
They don't flip. I found in California when I was driving as well, like in New England, if you cut somebody off, they could come after you, flip you off. Yeah. In California, they don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah, no, it's just weird.
Well, what's interesting, they don't honk either. I don't know, but Jim, it's interesting because having lived most of my adult life in New England arguably is the honking capital of the world, maybe second only to New York City,
which is pretty much northeast. So, but it
is. So it's in northeast, but New England has a special brand of it, and you come to California, they just don't do it. They don't. Like, they're like, dude, chill out. Just move around. It's not a big deal. And so if you honk, which I still do, but like it's habit. I can't like uningrain it. You honk, and people are like, "What was that? Why on earth?" Like, honking would be. They do honk. Honking is you're about to hit someone. It's an emergency. Like, you hit it when a crash is imminent. Like, oh my gosh, brace yourselves. Shy of that, you don't honk.
Which is fascinating because California has its fair share of crazy traffic, right? And multiple lanes, 6-lane highways, I remember driving out there distinctly multiple times, and like, I'm aggressive, and like, people are like, whatever.
Okay. They'll be aggressive drivers.
Yeah.
They'll drive crazy, but they don't honk.
They don't.
Now, maybe they'll shoot, but they won't honk.
So
we're long on this.
Yeah, so we're gonna wrap this up, and we'll see what portions of this make the cut. Richie's gonna have a little bit of work probably cobbling this together. I think there's a lot of things, I especially wanted to talk about. Again, the messages I want for people is just continue to try to observe the situation around you. Force yourself. Just look around. It's fascinating, if for no other reason, just to observe people. If you step back just in people watch. So sometimes you can just sit on a bench and people watch, but if you do that in a corporate setting or in a meeting, you're going to learn more than you can imagine if you don't do this already. And it's a skill that's gonna help you by far. And to Braden's point, learn not just your job, learn kind of what's around you. If you're part of a function, learn the parts that precede you and the parts that come after you. Just be alert on that, and it's going to help you be successful in your projects. It's going to help your career and whatnot, and it'll open up other opportunities. And that's the other thing that'll happen through awareness like this. You're going to see other opportunities, whether it's yourself or other things. That was it on this one. Anything else you want to add before we wrap on it?
No, I think aside from some of my asides about your poor choice in cinematography, I think we covered everything else.
Yeah, and I appreciate you limiting the bodily noises and singing.
I didn't even start. I was going to just start belting, so I'm glad that we saved everyone from it.
So we'll see. You know, where we'll end up with the next one. We obviously want to do another Lamentables episode. That we've got a lot queued up for that, and then I did promise the interview portion of things. So at some point, Braden and I do have some cool friends.
Much cooler than us,
right? Exactly, much cooler than us. That we do want to get on here. So we're gonna try to make that open. Hope everybody's summer is going well, and you know, give us a like, a subscribe. If there's anything you would like us to cover, or you know, you want to reinforce that we want to talk about AI again, you know, we're happy to do that again. But in all seriousness, appreciate you guys listening, and we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.
See you guys.